Hello and welcome to this second look exploring session as we return to Cornelia by Robert Garnier, translated by Thomas Kyd. And yes, we've already done a first look exploring session. We've stopped and started, we've discussed it, we've pulled it apart a bit, and we've asked lots of interesting questions. And now we're going to do a second look, our first take at a second look, where we're just going to run at it with pace and energy and throw some performance at it. Maybe not perfect, we're not aiming for perfection, we're just going to throw ideas at the wall and see what sticks with these wonderful series of readers, some of whom have read the play before, some of whom have never have no idea what Kyd is going to be throwing at you in this cheerful, happy tale of Roman folk. So joining us today to read, who have we got? Yes, reading Cicero and also a chorus of Caesar's friends is
Lynsey Beauchamp, actor in Scotland.
Reading the title character Cornelia is
Liza Graham, actor, singer, other stuff in London.
Reading, amongst other things, Philip, Antony, and also the chorus is...
I am Greg. I'm based in Stratford-on-Avon, and I don't think this is going to end well.
Reading Cassius, messenger, and also a chorus is...
Rachael, actor on the East Coast.
Reading Caesar, as well as chorus, additionally, is...
Leo, I'm a student.
And reading Brutus, and also the chorus, is...
Hello, I'm Tom. I'm a retired postman.
Oh, excellent. And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I will briefly read a chorus at one point because I have no stage directions to read. There will be no stage directions read. Any actions we will endeavour to enact. Otherwise, we'll just let the text flow, which we must get on with doing because it's a chunky play, just about doable in the time that we've got allotted. So without further ado, take a moment to get into the zone as Cicero enters the stage.
Vouchsafe, immortals, and above the rest, great Jupiter, our city's sole protector, that if provoked against us by our evils, you needs will plague us with your ceaseless wrath, at least to choose those forth that are in fault, and save the rest in these tempestuous broils. Else let the mischief that should them befall be poured on me, that one may die for all. Oft hath such sacrifice appeased your ires, and oft ye have your heavy hands withheld from this poor people, when with one man's loss your pity hath preserved the rest untouched. But we, disloyal to our own defence, faint-hearted do those liberties enthrall, which to preserve unto our after good, our fathers hazarded their dearest blood. Yet Brutus, Manlius, hardy Scaevola, and stout Camillus are returned from Styx, desiring arms to aid our capital. Yea, come they are, and fiery as before. Under a tyrant sea our bastard hearts lie idly sighing, while our shameful souls endure a million of base controls. Poisoned ambition, rooted in high minds, 'tis thou that trainst us into all these errors. Thy mortal covetise perverts our laws and tears our freedom from our franchised hearts. Our fathers found thee at their former walls, and humbled to their offspring left thee dying. Yet thou, reviving, soiledst our infant town with guiltless blood, by brothers' hands outlaunched, and hungst, O hell, upon a fort half finished, thy monstrous murder for a thing to mark. That faith continues not where men command. Equals are ever bandying for the best. A state divided cannot firmly stand. Two kings within one realm could never rest. This day we see the father and the son have fought like foes, Pharsalia's miseries. and with their blood made marsh the parched plains, while the earth that groaned to bear their carcasses bewailed the insatiate humours of them both, that as much blood in wilful folly spent as were to tame the world sufficient. Now, Parthia, fear no more, for Crassus' death, that he will come thy borders to besiege, nor fear the darts of our courageous troops, for those brave soldiers that were sometime wont to terrify thee with their names are dead. And civil fury, fiercer than thine hosts, hath in a manner this great town o'erturned, that whilom was the terror of the world, of whom so many nations stood in fear, to whom so many nations prostrate stooped, o'er whom, save heaven, naught could signorize, and whom, save heaven, nothing could affright, impregnable, immortal, and whose power could never have been curbed but by itself. For neither could the flaxen-haired High Dutch, a martial people madding after arms, nor yet the fierce and fiery humid French, the Moor that travels to the Libyan sands, the Greek, the Arabian, Macedons or Medes, once dare to assault it, or attempt to lift their humbled heads in presence of proud Rome, but by our laws from liberty restrained, like captives, lived eternally enchained. But Rome, alas, what helps it, that thou tight'st the former world to thee in vassalage? What helps thee now to have tamed both land and sea? What helps it thee that under thy control the morn and midday, both by east and west, and that the golden sun, where'er he drive his glittering chariot, finds our ensigns spread, sith it contents not thy posterity, but as a bait for pride, which spoils us all, embarks us in so perilous a way, as menaceth our death and thy decay. For Rome, thou now resemblest a ship at random wandering in a boisterous sea, when foaming billows feed the northern blasts. Thou toil'st in peril, and the windy storm doth topside turvy toss thee as thou float'st. Thy mast is shivered, and thy mainsail torn. Thy sides are beaten, and thy hatches broke. Thou want'st thy tackling, and a ship unrigged can make no shift to combat with the sea. See how the rocks do heave their heads at thee, which if thou shouldst but touch, thou straight becomest a spoil to Neptune, and a sportful prey to the Glaucs and Titans, pleased with thy decay. Thou vaunt'st not of thine ancestors in vain, but vainly count'st thine own victorious deeds. What helpeth us the things that they did then? Now we are hated both of gods and men. Hatred accompanies prosperity, for one man grieveth at another's good, and so much more we think our misery, the more that fortune hath with others stood. So that we seld are seen as wisdom would to bridle time with reason as we should. For we are proud when fortune favours us, as if inconstant chance were always won, or standing now, we should continue thus. O fools, look back and see the rolling stone, whereon she blindly lighting sets her foot, and slightly sows that seldom taketh root. Heaven heretofore inclined to do us good, did favour us with conquering our foes, when jealous Italy, exasperate with our uprising, sought our city's fall. But we, soon tickled with such flattering hope, waged farther war with an insatiate heart, and tired our neighbour country so with charge, and with their loss we did our bounds enlarge. Carthage and Sicily we have subdued, and almost yoked all the world beside, and solely through desire of public rule, Rome and the earth are waxen all as one. Yet now we live despoiled and robbed by one of the ancient freedom wherein we were born, and e'en that yoke that wont to tame all others is heavily returned upon ourselves. A note of chance that may the proud control and show God's wrath against a cruel soul, for heaven delights not in us when we do that to another which ourselves disdain. Judge others as you wouldst be judged again, and do but as thou wouldst be done unto. For sooth to say, in reason, we deserve to have the self-same measure that we serve. What right had our ambitious ancestors, ignobly issued from the cart and plough, to enter Asia? What, were they the heirs to Persia or the Medes' first monarchies? What interest had they to Africa, to Gaul or Spain? Or what did Neptune owe us within the bounds of Father Brittany? Are we not thieves and robbers of those realms that owed us nothing but revenge for wrongs? What toucheth us the treasure or the hopes, the lives or liberties of all those nations whom we by force have held in servitude, whose mournful cries and shrieks to heaven ascend, importuning both vengeance and defense against this city, rich of violence? 'Tis not enough, alas, our power to extend or overrun the world from east to west, or that our hands the earth can comprehend, or that we proudly do what likes us best. He lives more quietly whose rest is made, and can with reason chasten his desire, than he that blindly toileth for a shade, and is with others' empire set on fire. Our bliss consists not in possessions, but in commanding our affections, in virtue's choice and vice's needful chase, far from our hearts, for staining of our face.
Upon thy back, where misery doth sit, O Rome, the heavens with their wrathful hand, revenge the crimes thy fathers did commit. But if, their father fury to withstand, which o'er thy walls thy rack sits menacing, thou dost not seek to calm heaven's ireful king, a further plague or pester all the land. The wrath of heaven, though urged we see, is slow in punishing the evils we have done. For what the Father have deserved, we know, is spared in him and punished in the Son. But to forgive the apter that they be, they are the more displeased when they see that we continue our offence begun. Then from her loathsome cave doth plague repair, that breathes her heavy poisons down to hell, which with their noisome fall corrupt the air, or meagre famine, which the weak foretell, or bloody war, or of other woes the worst, which where it lights doth show the land accursed. Ne'er did good, wherever it befell. War, but have sought the Ausonian fame to rear in warlike Emony, now grown so great with soldiers' bodies that were buried there, which yet to sack us toils in bloody sweat. To enlarge the bounds of conquering Thessaly through murder, discord, wrath, and enmity, even to the peaceful Indians' pearled seat. whose entrails, fired with rancour, wrath, and rage, the former petty combats did displace, and camp to camp did endless battles wage, which on the mountain tops of warlike Thrace made thundering Mars, dissension's common friend, amongst the forward soldiers first descend. Armed with his blood besmeared keen cutlass, who first attempted to excite to arms the troops enraged with the trumpet sound, headlong to run and wreck no after harms, wherein the flowered meads dead men were found, falling as thick through warlike cruelty as ears of corn for want of husbandry, that wasteful shed their grain upon the ground. O war, if thou wert subject but to death, and by desert mightst fall to Phlegethon, the torment that Ixion suffereth, or his whose soul the vulture seizeth on, all too little to reward thy wrath. Nor will the plagues that fiery Pluto have them most outrageous sinners laid upon. Accursed caitiffs, wretches that we are! Perceive we not, for the fatal doom the fates must haste enough, but we by war must seek in hell to have a hapless room? Or fast enough do foolish men not die, but they by murder of themselves must hie hopeless to hide them in a hapless tomb? All sad and desolate our city lies, and for corn ground are our fields surcloyed with worthless gorse, that yearly fruitless dies, and chokes the good which else we had enjoyed. Death dwells within us, and if gentle peace descend not soon, our sorrows to surcease, Latium, already quailed, will be destroyed.
And will ye needs bedew my dead-grown joys, and nourish sorrow with eternal tears? O eyes, and will ye, 'cause I cannot dry your ceaseless springs, not suffer me to die? Then make the blood from forth my branch-like veins, like weeping rivers, trickle by your vaults, and sponge my body's heat of moisture, so as my displeased soul may shun my heart. Heavens, let me die, and let the destinies admit me passage to the infernal lake, that my poor ghost may rest where powerful fate in death's sad kingdom hath my husband lodged. Fain would I die, but darksome ugly death withholds his dart, and in disdain doth fly me, maliciously knowing that hell's horror is milder than mine endless discontent, that, if death upon my life should seize, the pain supposed would procure mine ease. But ye sad powers that rule the silent deeps of dead sad night, where sins do mask unseen, you that among the darksome mansions of pining ghosts twixt sighs and sobs and tears do exercise your mirthless empery, ye gods at whose arbitrament all stand, dislodge my soul and keep it with yourselves, for I am more than half your prisoner. My noble husband, more than noble souls, already wander under your commands. Oh, then shall wretched I that am but one, yet once both theirs, survive now they are gone. Alas, thou shouldst, Cornelia, have broke the sacred thread that tied thee here, when as thy husband Crassus in his flower did first bear arms and bear away my love, and not as thou hast done go break the bands by calling Hymen once more back again. Less hapless and more worthily thou mightst have made thine ancestors and thee renowned, if, like a royal dame with faith fast kept, thou with thy former husband's death hadst slept. But partial fortune and the powerful fates that in thy pleasures wield our purposes bewitched my life and did beguile my love. Pompey, the fame that ran of thy frail honors made me thy wife, thy love, and like a thief from my first husband stole my faithless grief. But if, As some believe, in heaven or hell be heavenly powers or infernal spirits that care to be avenged of lovers' oaths made in marriage and after broke. Those powers, those spirits, moved with my light faith, are now displeased with Pompey and myself, and do with civil discord, furthering it, untie the bands that sacred Hymen knit. Else only I am cause of both their wraths and of the sin that sealeth up thine eyes. Thine eyes, O deplorable Pompey, I am she. I am thy plague that sacks thy house and thee. For 'tis not heaven nor Crassus, 'cause he sees that I am thine, in jealousy pursues us. No, 'tis a secret cross, an unknown thing that I received from heaven at my birth, that I should heap misfortunes on their head, whom once I had received in marriage bed. Then ye, the noble Romulists that rest henceforth, forbear to seek my murdering love, and let their double loss that held me dear bid you beware, for fear you be beguiled. Ye may be rich and great in fortune's grace, and all your hopes with hap may be effected, but if ye once be wedded to my love, clouds of adversity will cover you. So pestilently fraught with change of plagues is mine infected bosom from my youth. Like poison that once lighting on the body no sooner toucheth than it taints the blood, one while the heart, another while the liver, according to the encountering passages, nor spareth it what purely feeds the heart, more than the most infected, filthiest part. Pompey, what holp it thee? Say, dearest life, tell me, what holp thy warlike valiant mind to encounter with the least of my mishaps? What holp it thee that under thy command thou saw'st the trembling earth with horror mazed? Or when the sun forsakes the ocean sea, or watereth his coursers in the west, to have made thy name to be more famed and feared than summer's thunder to the silly herd? What holp it? When thou sawest when thou wert young thy helmet decked with coronets of bays. So many enemies in battle ranged beat back like flies before a storm of hail, to have looked askance and see so many kings to lay their crowns and scepters at thy feet, to embrace thy knees, and humbled by their fate, to attend thy mercy in this mournful state. Alas, and herewithal what holp it thee that even in all the corners of the earth thy wandering glory was so greatly known, and that Rome saw thee while thou triumphedst thrice over 3 parts of the world that thou hadst yoked, that Neptune, weltering on the windy plains, escaped not free from thy victorious hands, since thy hard hap, since thy fierce destiny, envious of all thine honours, gave thee me, by whom the former course of thy fair deeds might with a biting bridle be restrained, by whom the glory of thy conquests got might die disgraced with mine unhappiness. O hapless wife, thus ominous to all, worse than Megaera, worse than any plague, what foul infernal or what stranger hell henceforth wilt thou inhabit, where thy hap none other's hopes with mischief might entrap?
What end, O race of Scipio, will the fates afford your tears? Will that day never come that your disastrous griefs shall turn to joy, and we have time to bury our annoy?
Ne'er shall I see that day, for heaven and time have failed in power to calm my passion. Nor can they, should they pity my complaints, once ease my life but with the pangs of death.
The wide world's accidents are apt to change, and fickle fortune stays not in a place, but like the clouds continually doth range, or like the sun that hath the night in chase. Then as the heavens by whom our hopes are guided do coast the earth with an eternal course, we must not think a misery betided will never cease, but still grow worse and worse. When icy winter's past, then comes the spring, whom summer's pride with sultry heat pursues, to whom mild autumn does earth's treasure bring, the sweetest season that the wise can choose. Heaven's influence was ne'er so constant yet, in good or bad, as to continue it. When I was young, I saw against poor Sylla, proud sinner, Marius and Carbo fleshed so long, till they 'gan tyrannize the town, and spilled such store of blood in every street, as there were none but dead men to be seen. Within a while, I saw how fortune played, and wound those tyrants underneath her wheel, who lost their lives and power at once by one, that to revenge himself did with his blade commit more murder than Rome ever made. Yet Sylla, shaking tyranny aside, returned due honours to our commonwealth, which peaceably retained her ancient state, grown great without the strife of citizens, till this ambitious tyrant's time that toiled to stoop the world and Rome to his desires. But flattering chance that trained his first designs may change her looks and give the tyrant over, leaving our city where so long ago heavens did their favours lavishly bestow.
'Tis true, the heavens, at leastwise, if they please, may give poor Rome her former liberty. But though they would, I know they cannot give a second life to Pompey that is slain.
Mourn not for Pompey. Pompey could not die a better death than for his country's weal. For oft he searched amongst the fierce alarms, but wishing could not find so fair an end, till fraught with years and honour both at once, he gave his body as a barricade for Rome's defence, by tyrants overlaid. Bravely he died, and happily takes it ill that envious we repine at heaven's will.
Alas, my sorrow would be so much less if he had died, his falchion in his fist. Had he among huge troops of armed men been wounded by another any way, it would have calmed many of my sighs. For why, to have seen his noble Roman blood mixed with his enemies had done him good. But he is dead, O heavens, not dead in fight, with pike in hand upon a fort besieged, defending of a breach, but basely slain, slain treacherously, without assault in war. Yea, slain he is, and bitter chance decreed to have me there, to see this bloody deed. I saw him, I was there, and in mine arms he almost felt the poniard when he fell, whereat my blood stopped in my straggling veins, mine hair grew bristled like a thorny grove, my voice lay hid half dead within my throat, my frightful heart stunned in my stone-cold breast faintly redoubled every feeble stroke, my spirit chained with impatient rage did raving strive to break the prison ope, enlarged to drown the pain it did abide in solitary Lethe's sleepy tide. Thrice to absent me from this hated light, I would have plunged my body in the sea, and thrice detained with doleful shrieks and cries, with arms to heaven upreared, I 'gan exclaim and bellow forth against the gods themselves, a bead roll of outrageous blasphemies, till, grief to hear and hell for me to speak, my woes waxed stronger and myself grew weak. Thus day and night I toil in discontent, and sleeping wake when sleep itself that rides upon the mist scarce moisteneth mine eyes. Sorrow consumes me, and instead of rest, with folded arms I sadly sit and weep, and if I wink, it is for fear to see the fearful dreams' effects that trouble me. O heavens, what shall I do? Alas, must I myself be murderer of myself? Must I myself be forced to ope the way, whereat my soul in wounds must sally forth?
Madam, you must not thus transpose yourself. We see your sorrow, but who sorrows not? The grief is common, And I muse besides the servitude that causeth all our cares, besides the baseness wherein we are yoked, besides the loss of good men dead and gone, what one he is that in this broil hath been, and mourneth not for some man of his kin.
If all the world were in the like distress, my sorrow yet would never seem the less.
Oh, but men bear misfortunes with more ease, the more indifferently that they fall, and nothing more in uproars men can please than when they see their woes not worst of all.
Our friends' misfortune doth increase our own.
But ours of others will not be acknown.
Yet one man's sorrow will another touch.
Aye, when himself will entertain none such.
Another's tears draws tears from forth our eyes.
And choice of streams the greatest river dries.
When sand within a whirlpool lies unwet, my tears shall dry, and I my grief forget.
What boot your tears, or what avails your sorrow against the inevitable dart of death? Think you to move with lamentable plaints Persephone or Pluto's ghastly spirits, to make him live that's locked in his tomb and wandereth in the centre of the earth? No, no, Cornelia, Charon takes not pain to ferry those that must be fetched again.
Proserpina indeed neglects my plaints, and hell itself is deaf to my laments. Unprofitably should I waste my tears if over Pompey I should weep to death with hope to have him be revived by them. Weeping avails not. Therefore do I weep. Great losses greatly are to be deplored. The loss is great that cannot be restored.
Naught is immortal underneath the sun. All things are subject to death's tyranny. Both clowns and kings one self-same course must run, and whatsoever lives is sure to die. Then wherefore mourn you for your husband's death, sith being a man he was ordained to die? Since Jove's own sons, retaining human shape, no more than wretched we their death could scape. Brave Scipio, your famous ancestor, that Rome's high worth to Afric did extend, and those two Scipios that in person fought before the fearful Carthaginian walls, both brothers, and both wars fierce lightning fires, are they not dead? Yes, and their death, our dearth, hath hid them both emboweled in the earth. And those great cities, whose foundations reached from deepest hell, and with their tops touched heaven, whose lofty towers, like thorny pointed spears, whose temples, palaces, and walls embossed in power and force and fierceness, seemed to threat the tired world that trembled with their weight, in one day's space to our eternal moans, have we not seen them turned to heaps of stones? Carthage can witness, and thou, heaven's handwork, fair Ilium, raised by the conquering Greeks, whose ancient beauty, worth, and weapons seemed sufficient to have tamed the Myrmidons. But whatsoever hath been begun must end. Death, haply that our willingness doth see, with brandished dart doth make the passage free. And timeless doth our souls to Pluto send.
Would death had steeped his dart in Lerna's blood, that I were drowned in the Tartarian deeps. I am an offering fit for Acheron. A match more equal never could be made than I and Pompey in the Elysian shade.
Death's always ready, and our time is known to be at heaven's dispose, not our own.
Can we be over hasty to good hap?
What could expect we in a fiery gap?
To 'scape the fears that follow fortune's glances.
A noble mind doth never fear mischances.
A noble mind disdaineth servitude.
Can bondage true nobility exclude?
How, if I do or suffer that I would not?
True noblesse never doth the thing it should not.
Then must I die?
Yet dying think this still, no fear of death should force us to do ill.
If death be such, why is your fear so rife?
My works will show I never feared my life.
And yet you will not that in our distress we ask death's aid to end life's wretchedness.
We neither ought to urge nor ask a thing wherein we feel so much assurance lies. But if perhaps some fierce offended king, to fright us, set pale death before our eyes, to force us do that goes against our heart, 'twere more than base in us to dread his dart. But when, for fear of an ensuing ill, we seek to shorten our appointed race, then 'tis for fear that we ourselves do kill. So fond we are to fear the world's disgrace.
'Tis not for frailty or faint cowardice that men to shun mischances seek for death, but rather he that seeks it shows himself of certain courage against uncertain chance. He that retires not at the threats of death is not, as are the vulgar, slightly frayed. For heaven itself nor hell's infectious breath the resolute at any time have stayed. And sooth to say, why fear we, when we see the thing we fear less than the fear to be? Then let me die, my liberty to save, for 'tis a death to live a tyrant's slave.
Daughter, beware how you provoke the heavens, which in our bodies as a tower of strength have placed our souls and fortified the same, as discreet princes set their garrisons in strongest places of their provinces. Now, as it is not lawful for a man at such a king's departure or decease to leave the place and falsify his faith, so in this case we ought not to surrender the dearer part till heaven itself command it. For as they lent us life to do us pleasure, so look they for return of such a treasure.
Whate'er the massy earth hath freight, or on her nurse-like back sustains, upon the will of heaven doth wait, and doth no more than it ordains. All fortunes, all felicities, upon their motion do depend, and from the stars doth still arise both their beginning and their end. The monarchies that cover all this earthy round with majesty have both their rising and their fall from heaven and heaven's variety. Frail men, or man's more frail defense, had never power to practice stays of this celestial influence that governeth and guides our days. No cloud but will be overcast, and what now flourisheth must fade. And that fades revives at last, to flourish as it first was made. The forms of things do never die, because the matter that remains reforms another thing thereby, that still the former shape retains. The roundness of two bowls cross cast, so they with equal pace be aimed, shows their beginning by their last, which by old nature is new framed. So peopled cities, that of yore were desert field, where none would bide, become forsaken as before, yet after are re-edified. Perceive we are not a petty vein, cut from a spring by chance or art, engendereth fountains. Once again, those fountains do to flood convert. Those floods to waves, those waves to seas, that oft exceed their wonted bounds, and yet those seas, as heaven please, return to springs by undergrounds. Even so our city in her prime, prescribing princes everything, is now subdued by conquering time, and liveth subject to a king. And yet perhaps the sun-bright crown, that now the tyrant's head doth deck, may turn to Rome with true renown, if fortune chance but once to check. The stately walls that once were reared and by a shepherd's hands erected, with hapless brothers' blood besmeared, shall show by whom they were infect. And once more unjust Tarquin's frown, with arrogance and rage inflamed, shall keep the Roman valor down, and Rome itself a while be tamed. And chastest Lucrece once again, because her name dishonored stood, shall by herself be careless slain, and make a river of her blood, scorning her soul a seat should build within a body basely seen, by shameless rape to be defiled, that erst was clear as heaven's queen, but heavens as tyranny shall yoke our bastard hearts with servile thrall. So grant your plagues which they provoke may light upon them once for all, and let another Brutus rise, bravely to fight in Rome's defense, to free our town from tyranny and tyranny's proud insolence.
The cheerful cock, the sad night's comforter, waiting upon the rising of the sun, doth sing to see how Cynthia shrinks her horn, while Clytie takes her progress to the east, where, ringing wet with drops of silver dew, her wonted tears of love she doth renew. The wandering swallow with her broken song, the country wench unto her work awakes, while Cytherea sighing walks to seek her murdered love transformed into a rose, whom though she see, to crop she kindly fears, but kissing sighs and dews him with her tears. Sweet tears of love, remembrances to time, time past with me that am to tears converted, whose mournful passions dull the morning's joys, and sweeter sleeps are turned to fearful dreams, and whose first fortunes filled with all distress afford no hope of future happiness. But what disastrous or hard accident hath bathed your blubbered eyes in bitter tears, that thus consort me in my misery? Why do you beat your breasts? Why mourn you so? Say, gentle sisters, tell me, and believe it grieves me that I know not why you grieve.
Oh, poor Cornelia, have we not good cause for former wrongs to furnish us with tears?
Oh, but I fear that fortune seeks new flaws, and still unsatisfied more hatred bears.
Wherein can fortune farther injure us? Now we have lost our conquered liberty, our commonwealth, our empire, and our honours, under this cruel Tarquin's tyranny. Under this outrage now are all our goods, where scattered they run by land and sea, like exiled us from fertile Italy, to proudest Spain or poorest Gaetuli.
And will the heavens that have so oft defended our Roman wars from fury of fierce kings not once again return our senators, that from the Libyc plains and Spanish fields with fearless hearts do guard our Roman hopes? Will they not once again encourage them to fill our fields with blood of enemies, and bring from Afric to our capital upon their helms the empire that is stole? Then, home-born household gods, and ye good spirits to whom in doubtful things we seek access, by whom our family hath been adorned and graced with the name of African, do ye vouchsafe that this victorious title be not expired in Cornelia's blood, and that my father now in the Afric wars the self-same style by conquest may continue. But wretched that I am, alas, I fear.
What fear you, madam?
That the frowning heavens oppose themselves against us in their wrath.
Our loss, I hope, hath satisfied their ire.
Oh no, our loss lifts Caesar's fortunes higher.
Fortune is fickle,
but hath failed him never.
The more unlike she should continue ever.
My fearful dreams do my despairs redouble.
Why suffer your vain dreams your head to trouble?
Who is not troubled with strange visions?
That of our spirit, but are but illusions.
God grant these dreams to good effect be brought.
We dream by night what we by day have thought.
The silent night that long had sojourned now 'gan to cast her sable mantle off, and now the sleepy wain man softly drove his slow-paced team that long had travelled, when, like a slumber, if you term it so, a dullness that disposeth us to rest, 'gan close the windows of my watchful eyes, already tired and loaden with my tears. And lo, methought came gliding by my bed the ghost of Pompey, with a ghastly look, all pale and brawn-fallen, not in triumph borne amongst the conquering Romans as we used, when he enthronized at his feet beheld great emperors fast bound in chains of brass, but all amazed, with fearful hollow eyes, his hair and beard deformed with blood and sweat, casting a thin, coarse linsel o'er his shoulders, the torn in pieces trailed upon the ground. Gnashing of his teeth unlocked his jaws, which slightly covered with a scarce seen skin. This solemn tale he sadly did begin. Sleep'st thou, Cornelia? Sleep'st thou, gentle wife? And seest thy father's misery and mine? Wake, dearest sweet, and o'er our sepulchres in pity show thy latest love to us. Such hap as ours attendeth on my sons, the self-same foe and fortune following them. Send Sextus over to some foreign nation, far from the common hazard of the wars, that being yet saved he may attempt no more to venge the valor that is tried before. He said, and suddenly a trembling horror, a chill, cold shivering settled in my veins, brake up my slumber, when I oped my lips 3 times to cry, but could nor cry nor speak. I moved my head and flung abroad mine arms to entertain him, but his airy spirit beguiled mine embracements, and unkind left me embracing nothing but the wind. O valiant soul, when shall this soul of mine come visit thee in the Elysian shades? O dearest life, or when shall sweetest death dissolve the fatal trouble of my days, and bless me with my Pompey's company? But may my father, extreme mishap, and such a number of brave regiments made of so many expert soldiers that loved our liberty and followed him, be so discomfited? Oh, would it were but an illusion!
Madam, never fear, nor let a senseless idol of the night increase a more than needful fear in you.
My fear proceeds not of an idle dream, for 'tis a truth that hath astonished me. I saw great Pompey, and I heard him speak, and thinking to embrace him, oped mine arms, when drowsy sleep that waked me at unawares did with his flight unclose my fearful eyes so suddenly, that yet methinks I see him. Howbeit I cannot touch him, for he slides more swiftly from me than the ocean glides.
These are vain thoughts or melancholy shows, that wont to haunt and trace by cloistered tombs, which eaths appear in sad and strange disguises to pensive minds, deceived with their shadows. They counterfeit the dead in voice and figure, divining of our future miseries. For when our soul the body hath disgaged, it seeks the common passage of the dead, down by the fearful great gates of Acheron, where, when it is by Aeacus adjudged, it either turneth to the Stygian lake, or stays forever in the Elysian fields, and ne'er returneth to the course interred, to walk by night, or make the wise afraid. None but inevitable conquering death descends to hell, with hope to rise again. For ghosts of men are locked in fiery gates, fast guarded by a fell, remorseless monster, and therefore think not it was Pompey's sprite, but some false demon that beguiled your sight.
Then, O world's queen, O town that did extend thy conquering arms beyond the ocean, and throngedst thy conquests from the Libyan shores down to the Scythian swift-foot fearless porters, thou art embased, and at this instant yieldst thy proud neck to a miserable yoke. Rome, thou art tamed, and the earth, dewed with thy blood, doth laugh to see how thou art signorized. The force of heaven exceeds thy former strength, For thou that won'st to tame and conquer all art conquered now with an eternal fall. Now shalt thou march, thy hands fast bound behind thee, thy head hung down, thy cheeks with tears besprent before the victor, while thy rebel son with crowned front triumphing follows thee, thy bravest captains, whose courageous hearts joined with the right did reinforce our hopes, now murdered lie for foul to feed upon. Petrius, Cato, and Scipio are slain, and Juba that amongst the Moors did reign. Now you, whom both the gods and fortune's grace have saved from danger in these furious broils, forbear to tempt the enemy again, for fear you feel a third calamity. Caesar is like a brightly flaming blaze that fiercely burns a house already fired, and ceaseless launching out on every side consumes the more you seek to quench it, still darting sparkles till it find a train to seize upon, and then it flames amain. The men, the ships, wherewith poor Rome affronts him, are all powerless give proud Caesar's wrath free passage. Naught can resist him. All the power we raise turns but to our misfortune and his praise. 'Tis thou, O Rome, that nursed his insolence. 'Tis thou, O Rome, that gavest him first the sword, which murderer-like against thyself he draws, and violates both God and nature's laws, like moral Aesop's misled country swain, that found a serpent pining in the snow, and full of foolish pity took it up, and kindly laid it by his household fire, till waxen warm it nimbly gan to stir, and stung to death the fool that fostered her. O gods that once had care of these our walls, and fearless kept us from the assault of foes, great Jupiter, to whom our capital so many oxen yearly sacrificed, Minerva, Stator, and stout Thracian Mars, father to good Quirinus, our first founder, to what intent have ye preserved our town, this stately town, so often hazarded against the Samnites, Sabines, and fierce Latins? Why from once footing in our fortresses have ye repelled the lusty warlike Gauls? Why from Molossus and false Hannibal have ye reserved the noble Romulists? Or why from Catlin's lewd conspiracies preserved ye Rome by my prevention? To cast so soon a state, so long defended, into the bondage where enthralled we pine, to serve no stranger, but amongst us one that with blind frenzy buildeth up his throne. But if in us be any vigor resting, if yet our hearts retain one drop of blood, Caesar, thou shalt not vaunt thy conquest long, nor longer hold us in this servitude, nor shalt thou bathe thee longer in our blood, for I divine that thou must vomit it, like to a cur that carrion hath devoured, and cannot rest until his maw be scoured. Think'st thou to signorize or be the king of such a number nobler than thyself? Or think'st thou Romans bear such bastard hearts to let thy tyranny be unrevenged? No, for methinks I see the shame, the grief, the rage, the hatred that they have conceived, and many a Roman sword already drawn to enlarge the liberty that thou usurpst, and thy dismembered body stabbed and torn, dragged through the streets, disdained to be born.
Amongst the rest of mine extreme mishaps, I find my fortune not the least in this, that I have kept my master company, both in his life and his latest hour. Pompey the Great, whom I have honoured with true devotion, both alive and dead. One self-same ship contained us when I saw the murdering Egyptians bereave his life. And when the man that had affrighted the earth did homage to it with his dearest blood, o' whom I shed full many a bitter tear, and did perform his exequies with sighs, and on the strand upon the riverside, where to my sighs the water seemed to turn, I wove a coffin for his course of segs, that with the wind did wave like bannerets, and laid his body to be burned thereon, which, when it was consumed, I kindly took and sadly closed within an earthy urn the ashy relics of his hapless bones, which, having scaped the rage of wind and sea, I bring to fair Cornelia to inter within his elder's tomb that honoured her.
Ah me, what see I?
Pompey's tender bones, which in extremes an earthen urn containeth.
Oh, sweet, dear, deplorable cinders. Oh, miserable woman, living, dying. Oh, poor Cornelia, born to be distressed, why livest thou toiled the dead mightst lie at rest? Oh, faithless hands that under cloak of love did entertain him to torment him so. Oh, barbarous, inhumane, hateful traitors! This, your disloyal dealing hath defamed your king and his inhospitable seat of the extremest and most odious crime that against the heavens might be imagined. For ye have basely broke the law of arms and outraged over an afflicted soul, murdered a man that did submit himself, and injured him that ever used you kindly. For which misdeed be Egypt pestered with battle, famine, and perpetual plagues. Let aspics, serpents, snakes, and Libyan bears, tigers, and lions breed with you forever. And let fair Nilus, wont to nurse your corn, cover your land with toads and crocodiles that may infect, devour, and murder you. Else earth make way and hell receive them quick, a hateful race, mongst whom there doth abide all treason, luxury, and homicide.
Cease these laments.
I do but what I ought to mourn his death.
Alas, that profits naught.
Will heaven let treason be unpunished?
Heavens will perform what they have promised.
I fear the heavens will not hear our prayer.
The plaints of men oppressed do pierce the air.
Yet Caesar liveth still.
Due punishment succeeds not always after an offence, for oftentimes 'tis for our chastisement that heaven doth with wicked men dispense. That when they list, they may with usury for all misdeeds pay home the penalty.
This is the hope that feeds my hapless days, else had my life been long ago expired. I trust the gods that see our hourly wrongs will fire his shameful body with their flames, except some man resolved shall conclude with Caesar's death to end our servitude. Else God tofore myself may live to see his tyrant corse lie toiling in his blood, gored with 1,000 stabs, and round about the wronged people leap for inward joy. And then come murder, then come ugly death, then leave thee open thine infernal lake. I'll down with joy, because before I died, mine eyes had seen what I in heart desired. Pompey may not revive, and Pompey dead, let me but see the murderer murthered.
Caesar bewailed his death.
His death he mourned, whom while he lived to live like him he scorned.
He punished his murderers.
Who murdered him but he that followed Pompey with the sword? He murdered Pompey that pursued his death, and cast the plot to catch him in the trap. He that of his departure took the spoil, whose fell ambition founded first in blood, by naught but Pompey's life could be withstood.
Fought in and faked There, Fotin and false Achilles be beheaded.
That was because that Pompey being their friend, they had determined once of Caesar's end.
Oh, what got he by his death?
Supremacy.
Oh, yet Caesar speaks of Pompey honourably.
Words are but wind, nor meant he what he spoke.
He will not let his statues to be broke.
By which disguise, whate'er he doth pretend, his own from being broke he doth defend. By the trains wherewith he us allures, his own estate more firmly he assures.
He took no pleasure in his death, you see.
Because himself of life did not bereave him.
Yea, he was moved with former amity.
He never trusted him but to deceive him. But had he loved him with a love unfeigned, yet had it been a vain and trustless league. For there is nothing in the soul of man so firmly grounded as can qualify the inextinguishable thirst of signory. Not heaven's fear, nor country's sacred love, nor ancient laws, nor nuptial chaste desire, respect of blood, or that which most should move the inward zeal that nature doth require. All these, nor anything we can devise, can stop the heart resolved to tyrannize.
I fear your griefs increase with this discourse.
My griefs are such as hardly can be worse.
Time calmeth all things.
No time qualifies my doleful spirit's endless miseries. My grief is like a rock, when ceaseless strain fresh springs of water at my weeping eyes, still fed by thoughts like floods with winter's rain. For when to ease the oppression of my heart I breathe an autumn forth of fiery sighs, yet herewith all my passion neither dies nor dries the heat of moisture of mine eyes.
Can nothing then recure these endless tears?
Yes, news of Caesar's death that medicine bears.
Madam, beware. For should he hear of this, his wrath against you 'twould exasperate.
I neither stand in fear of him nor his.
'Tis policy to fear a powerful hate.
What can he do?
Oh, madam, what cannot men that have the power to do? What pleaseth them?
He can do me no mischief that I dread.
Yes, cause your death.
Thrice happy were I dead.
With rigorous torment.
Let him torture me. Pull me in pieces, famish, fire me up, fling me alive into a lion's den. There is no death so hard torments me so as his extreme triumphing in our woe. But if he will torment me, let him then deprive me wholly of the hope of death. For I had died before the fall of Rome and slept with Pompey in the peaceful deeps, save that I live in hope to see ere long that Caesar's death shall satisfy his wrong.
Fortune in power imperious used o'er the world and worldlings thus to tyrannize. When she hath heaped her gifts on us, away she flies. Her feet more swift than is the wind, are more inconstant in their kind than autumn's blasts. A woman's shape, a woman's mind that seldom lasts. One while she bends her angry brow, and of no labour will allow. Another while she fleers again, I know not how, still to beguile. Fickle in our adversities, and fickle when our fortunes rise, she scoffs at us, that, blind herself, can blear our eyes, to trust her thus. The sun that lends the earth his light, beheld, can never overnight lie calmly down, but in the morning following might perceive her frown. She hath not only power and will to abuse the vulgar wanting skill, but when she list to kings and clowns doth equal ill without resist. Mischance, that every man abhors, and cares for crown and emperors she doth reserve. As for the poorest labourers that work or starve, the merchant that for private gain doth send his ships to pass the main upon the shore, in hope he shall his wish obtain, doth thee adore. Upon the sea or on the land, where health or wealth or vines do stand, thou canst do much, and often help'st the helpless band, thy power is such. And many times, disposed to jest, against one whose power and cause is best thy power to try. To him that ne'er put spear in rest gives victory. For so the Libyan monarchy, that with Ausonian blood did die, our warlike field, the one that ne'er got victory, was urged to yield. So noble Marius, Arpin's friend, that did the Latin state defend from Cimbrian rage, did prove thy fury in the end, which naught could swage, and Pompey, whose days haply led, so long thou seem'st to have favoured in this vein, 'tis said, when the Pharsalian field he led, implored thine aid. Now Caesar, swoln with honour's heat, sits signorizing in her seat, and will not see that fortune can her hopes defeat, whate'er they be. From chance is nothing franchised, and till the time that they are dead is no man blessed. He only, that no death doth dread, doth live at rest.
Accursed Rome, that arm'st against thyself a tyrant's rage, and mak'st a wretch thy king, for one man's pleasure, O injurious Rome, thy children 'gainst thy children thou hast armed, and think'st not of the rivers of their blood that erst were shed to save thy liberty, because thou ever hatedst monarchy. Now o'er our bodies tumbled up on heaps, like cocks of hay when July shears the field. Thou built'st thy kingdom, and thou seat'st thy king, and to be servile, which torments me most, employ'st our lives, and lavishest our blood. O Rome, accursed Rome, thou murderest us, and massacrest thyself in yielding thus. Yet are there gods, yet is there heaven and earth, that seem to fear a certain thunderer? No, no, there are no gods, or if there be, they leave to see into the world's affairs. They care not for us, nor account of men, for what we see is done by chance. 'Tis fortune rules, for equity and right have neither help nor grace in heaven's sight. Scipio hath wrenched a sword into his breast, and launched his bleeding wound into the sea. Undaunted Cato tore his entrails out. Afranius and Faustus died. Juba and Petreius, fiercely combating, have each done other equal violence. Our armies broken, and the Libyan bears devour the bodies of our citizens. The conquering tyrant, high in fortune's grace, doth ride triumphing o'er our commonwealth, and mournful we behold him bravely mounted with stern looks in his chariot, where he leads the conquered honor of the people yoked. So Rome to Caesar yields both power and pelf, and o'er Rome Caesar reigns in Rome itself. But Brutus, shall we dissolutely sit and see the tyrant live to tyrannize? Or shall their ghosts that died to do us good plain in their tombs of our base cowardice? Shall lamed soldiers and grave gray-haired men point at us in their bitter tears and say, see where they go that have their race forgot, and rather choose unarmed to serve with shame than armed to save their freedom and their fame?
I swear by heaven, the immortals' highest throne, their temples, altars, and their images, to see for one that Brutus suffers not his ancient liberty to be repressed. I freely marched with Caesar in his wars, not to be subject, but to aid his right. But if, envenomed with ambitious thought, he lift his hand imperiously o'er us, if he determined but to reign in Rome, or followed Pompey but to this effect, or if these civil discords with now dissolved, he rendered not the empire back to Rome, then shall he see that Brutus this day bears the same self-samed arms to be avenged on him, and that his hand, though Caesar's blood abhor, shall toil in his, which I am sorry for. I love, I love him dearly, but the love that men their country and their birthright bear exceeds all loves, and dearer is by far our country's love than friends or children are.
If this brave care be nourished in your blood, or if so frank a will your soul possess, why haste we not, even while these words are uttered, to sheathe our new ground swords in Caesar's throat? Why spend we daylight, and why dies he not, that by his death we wretches may revive? We stay too long, I burn till I be there to see this massacre and send his ghost to theirs, whom subtly he for monarchy made fight to death with show of liberty.
Yet happily he, as Silvia whilom did, when he hath rooted civil war from Rome, will therewithal discharge the power he hath.
Caesar and Sylla, Brutus, be not like. Sylla, assaulted by the enemy, did arm himself, but in his own defense, against both Cinna's host and Marius, whom when he had discomfited and chased, and of his safety truly was assured, he laid apart the power that he had got, and gave up rule, for he desired it not, where Caesar that in silence might have slept, nor urged by aught but his ambition, did break into the heart of Italy, and like rude Brennus brought his men to field, traversed the sea, and shortly after, backed with wintered soldiers used to conquering, he aimed at us, bent to exterminate whoever sought to intercept his state. Now, having got what he hath gaped for, dear Brutus, think you Caesar such a child, slightly to part with so great seniority, seniori? Believe it not. He bought it dear, you know, and traveled too far to leave it so.
But Cassius, Caesar is not yet a king.
No, but a dictator in effect as much. He doth what pleaseth him, a princely thing, and wherein differ they, whose power is such?
He is not bloody.
But by bloody jars he hath unpeopled most part of the earth. Both Gaul and Afric perished by his wars. Egypt, Emathia, Italy, and Spain are full of dead men's bones by Caesar slain. The infectious plague and famine's bitterness, or the ocean, whom no pity can assuage, though they contain dead bodies numberless, are yet inferior to Caesar's rage, who, monster-like, with his ambition, hath left more tombs than ground to lay them on.
Soldiers with such reproach should not be blamed.
He with his soldiers hath himself defamed.
Why, then, you think there is no praise in war?
Yes, where the causes reasonable are.
He hath enriched the empire with new states,
which with ambition now he ruinates.
but he hath revenged the Gauls' old injury, and made them subject to our Roman laws.
The restful Almains with his cruelty he rashly stirred against us without cause, and hazarded our cities and ourselves against a harmless nation, kindly given, to whom we should do well for some amends to render him and reconcile old friends. These nations did he purposely provoke to make an army for his after aid against the Romans, whom in policy he trained in war to steal their seniori, like them that, striving at the Olympian sports to grace themselves with honor of the game, anoint their sinews fit for wrestling, and ere they enter, use some exercise. The Gauls were but a foregame fetched about for civil discord, wrought by Caesar's slights, whom, to be king himself, he soon removed, teaching a people hating servitude to fight for that did their deaths conclude.
The wars once ended, we shall quickly know whether he will restore the state or no.
No, Brutus, never look to see that day. For Caesar holdeth seniority too dear. But know, well, Cassius hath one drop of blood to feed this worthless body that you see. What reck I death to do so many good? In spite of Caesar, Cassius will be free.
A generous or true and noble spirit detests to learn what tastes of servitude.
Brutus, I cannot serve nor see Rome yoked. No, let me rather die 1,000 deaths. The stiff-necked horses champ not on the bit, nor meekly bear the rider but by force. The sturdy ox toil not at the plow, nor yield unto the yoke, but by constraint. Shall we then, that are men and Romans born, submit us to unurged slavery? Shall Rome, that hath so many overthrown, now make herself a subject to her own? O base indignity, a beardless youth, whom King Nicomedes could overreach, commands the world, and bridleth all the earth, and like a prince controls the Romulists, brave Roman soldiers, stern-born sons of Mars, and none, not one, that dares to undertake the interception of his tyranny. O Brutus, speak. O say, Servilius, why cry you aim, and see us used thus? But Brutus lives, and sees, and knows, and feels that there is one that curbs their country's wheel, that there is yet as he were the semblance, not the son, of noble Brutus, his great-grandfather, as if he wanted hands, sense, sight, heart. He doth, deviseth, sees, not dareth aught that may extirp or raise these tyrannies, nor aught doth Brutus that to brute belongs, but still increaseth by his negligence his own disgrace and Caesar's violence. The wrong is great and overlong endured. We should have practiced, conspired, conjured 1,000 ways and weapons to repress or kill outright this cause of our distress.
Who prodigally spends his blood bravely to do his country good, and liveth to no other end, but resolutely to attempt what may the innocent defend, and bloody tyrants' rage prevent. And he, that in his soul assured hath waters force and fire endured, and passed the pikes of 1,000 hosts to free the earth from tyranny, and fearless scours on dangerous coasts to enlarge his country's liberty. Were all the world his foes before, now shall they love him evermore. His glory spread abroad by fame, on wings of his posterity. From obscure death shall free his name to live in endless memory. All after ages shall adore, and honour him with hymns therefore. Yearly the youth for joy shall bring the fairest flowers that grow in Rome, and yearly in the summer sing o'er his heroic kingly tomb. For so the 2 Athenians that from their fellow citizens did freely chase vile servitude shall live for valiant prowess blessed. No sepulchre shall e'er exclude their glory equal with the best. But when the vulgar, mad, and rude repay good with ingratitude, hardly then they them reward that to free them from the hands of a tyrant ne'er regard in what plight their person stands. For high Jove, that guideth all, when he lets his just wrath fall to revenge proud diadems with huge cares did cross kings' lives, raising treasons in their realms by their children, friends, or wives. Therefore he, whom all men fear, feareth all men everywhere. Fear that doth engender hate, hate enforcing them thereto, maketh many undertake many things they would not do. Oh, how many mighty kings live in fear of petty things! For when kings have sought by wars stranger towns to have overthrown, they have caught deserved scars, seeking that was not their own. For no tyrant, commonly, living ill, can kindly die, but either traitorously surprised, doth coward poison quail their breath, or their people have devised on their guard to seek their death. He only lives most happily, that free and far from majesty can live content, although unknown, he fearing none, none fearing him, meddling with nothing but his own, while gazing eyes at crowns grow dim.
O Rome, that with thy pride dost overpeer the worthiest cities of the conquered world, whose honour, got by famous victories, hath filled heaven's fiery vaults with frightful horror. O lofty towers, O stately battlements, O glorious temples, O proud palaces, and you brave walls, bright heaven's masonry, graced with 1,000 kingly diadems. Are ye not stirred with a strange delight to see your Caesar's matchless victories, and how your empire and your praise begins through fame, which he of stranger nations wins? O beauteous Tiber, with thine easy streams that glide as smoothly as a Parthian shaft, turn not thy crispy tides like silver curl back to thy grass-green banks to welcome us, and with a gentle murmur haste to tell the foaming seas the honour of our fight? Trudge not thy streams to Triton's mariners, to bruit the praises of our conquest past, and make their vaunts to old Oceanus, that henceforth Tiber shall salute the seas, more famed than Tiger or fair Euphrates. Now all the world well nigh doth stoop to Rome, the sea, the earth, and all is almost ours. Be it where the bright sun with his neighbour beams doth early light the pearled Indians, or where his chariot stays to stop the day till heaven unlock the darkness of the night. Be it where the sea is wrapped in crystal ice, or where the summer doth but warm the earth, or here, or there, where is not Rome renowned, there lives no king, how great soe'er he be, but trembleth if he once but hear of me. Caesar is now earth's fame and fortune's terror, and Caesar's worth hath stained old soldiers' praises. Rome, speak no more of either Scipio, nor of the Fabii, nor the Fabricians. Here let the Decii and their glory die. Caesar hath tamed more nations, tamed more towns, and fought more battles than the best of them. Caesar doth triumph over all the world, and all they scarcely conquered a nook. The Gauls that came to Tiber to carouse did live to see my soldiers drink at Loire, and those brave Germans, true-born martialists, beheld the swift Rhine underrun mine ensigns. The Britons, locked within a watery realm and walled by Neptune, stooped to me at last. The faithless Moor, the fierce Numidian, the earth that the Euxine sea makes sometimes marsh, the stony-hearted people that inhabit where the sevenfold Nilus doth disgorge itself, have all been urged to yield to my command. Yea, even this city that hath almost made an universal conquest of the world, and that brave warrior, my brother-in-law, that, ill-advised, repined at my glory. Pompey, that second Mars, whose haught renown and noble deeds were greater than his fortunes, proved to his loss. But even in one assault, my hand, my hap, my heart exceeded his, when the Thessalian fields were purpled o'er with either army's murdered soldiers' gore, when he, to conquering accustomed, did conquered fly, his troops discomfited. Now Scipio, that longed to show himself descent of African, so famed for arms, he durst affront me and my warlike bands upon the coasts of Libya, till he lost his scattered army, and to shun the scorn of being taken captive, killed himself. Now, therefore, let us triumph, Antony, and rendering thanks to heaven as we go, for bridling those that did malign our glory, let's go to the capital.
Oh, come on, brave Caesar, and crown thy head and mount thy chariot. The impatient people run along the streets, and in a rout against thy gates they rush, to see their Caesar after dangers past, made conqueror and emperor at last.
I call to witness heaven's great thunderer, that 'gainst my will I have maintained this war. Nor thirsted I for conquest bought with blood. I join not in the death of citizens, but through my self-willed enemies' despite and Romans' wrong was I constrained to fight.
They sought to eclipse thy fame, but destiny reversed the effects of their ambition, and Caesar's praise increased by their disgrace, that recked not of his virtuous deeds. But thus we see it fareth with the envious.
I never had the thought to injure them, howbeit I never meant my greatness should by any other's greatness be o'erruled. For as I am inferior to none, so can I suffer no superiors.
Well, Caesar, now they are discomfited, and crows are feasted with their carcasses. And yet I fear you have too kindly saved those that with your kindness hardly will requite.
Why, Antony, what would you wish me do? Now shall you see that they will pack to Spain, and joined with the exiles there encamped, until the ill spirit that doth them defend do bring their treasons to a bloody end.
I fear not those that to their weapons fly and keep their state in Spain to die.
Whom fear'st thou then, Mark Antony?
The hateful crew that wanting power in field to conquer you, have in their coward souls devised snares to murder thee and take thee at unawares.
Will those conspire my death that live by me?
In conquered foes what credit can there be?
Besides their lives, I did their goods restore.
Oh, but their country's goods concern them more.
What, think they me to be their country's foe?
No, but that thou usurps the right they owe.
To Rome have I submitted mighty things.
Oh, yet Rome endures not the command of kings.
Who dares to contradict our empery?
Those whom thy rule have robbed of liberty.
I fear them not, whose death is but deferred.
I fear my foe until he be interred.
A man may make his foe his friend, you know.
A man may easily make his friend his foe.
Good deeds the cruelest heart to kindness bring.
Oh, but resolution is a deadly thing.
If citizens my kindness have forgot, who shall I then not fear?
Those that are not.
What, shall I slay then all that I suspect?
Else cannot Caesar empery endure.
Rather, I will my life and all neglect. Nor labour I my vain life to assure, but so to die, as dying I may live. And, leaving off this earthly tomb of mine, ascend to heaven upon my winged deeds. And shall I not have lived long enough, that in so short a time am so much famed? Can I too soon go taste Cocytus's flood? No, Antony, death cannot injure us, for he lives long that dies victorious.
Thy praises show thy life is long enough, but for thy friends and country all too short. Should Caesar live as long as Nestor did, yet Rome may wish his life eternized.
Heaven sets our time, with heaven may naught dispense.
But we may shorten time with negligence.
But fortune and the heavens have care of us.
Fortune is fickle, heaven imperious.
What shall I then do?
As befits your state. Maintain a watchful guard about your gate.
What more assurance may our state defend than love of those that do on us attend.
There is no hatred more, if it be moved, than theirs whom we offend and once beloved.
Better it is to die than be suspicious.
'Tis wisdom yet not to be credulous.
The quiet life that carefully is led is not alone happy in this world, but death itself doth sometime pleasure us. That death that comes unsent for or unseen, and suddenly doth take us at unaware, methinks is sweetest. And if heaven were pleased, I could desire that I might die so well. The fear of evil doth afflict us more than the evil itself, though it ne'er be so sore.
O fair sun that gently smiles from the orient pearled isles, gilding these our gladsome days with the beauty of thy rays, free from the rage of civil strife, long preserve our Caesar's life, that from sable Afric brings conquests whereof Europe rings. And fair Venus, thou of whom the Aeneades are come, henceforth vary not thy grace from Aeolus' happy race. Rather cause thy dearest son, by his triumphs new begun, to expel from forth the land fierce war's quenchless firebrand, that care of acquitting us, who at last adore him thus, he a peaceful star appear, from our walls all foes to clear. And so let his warlike brows still be decked with laurel boughs, and his statues newly set with many a fresh flowered coronet. So in every place let be feasts and masks and mirthful glee, strewing roses in the street when they their emperor they meet. He his foes hath conquered, never leaving till they fled, and abhorring blood at last, pardoned all offences past. For high Jove the heavens among, their support that suffer wrong, doth oppose himself again, bloody-minded cruel men. For he shorteneth their days, or prolongs them with dispraise, or his greater wrath to show, gives them over to their foe. Caesar, a citizen so wronged, of the honour him belonged, to defend himself from harms, was enforced to take up arms. For he saw that envy's dart, pricking still their poisoned heart, for his sudden glory got, made his envious foe so hot. Wicked envy, feeding still, foolish those that do thy will, for thy poisons in them pour, sundry passions every hour. And to choler doth convert purest blood about the heart, which overflowing of their breast suffereth nothing to digest. Other men's prosperity is their infelicity, and their choler then is raised when they hear another praised. Neither Phoebus' fairest eye feasts nor friendly company, mirth or whatsoe'er it be, with their humour can agree. Day or night they never rest, spiteful hate so pecks their breast, pinching their perplexed lungs with her fiery poisoned tongues. Firebrands in their breasts they bear, as if Tisiphon were there, and their souls are pierced as sore as Prometheus' ghost, and more. Wretches, they are woe begone, for their wound is always one, nor hath Charon power or skill to recure them of their ill.
Unhappy man, amongst so many wracks as I have suffered both by land and sea, that scornful destiny denies my death, oft have I seen the ends of mightier men, whose coats of steel base death hath stolen into, and in this direful war before mine eyes beheld their corses scattered on the plains, and endless numbers falling by my side, nor those ignoble, but the noblest lords, mongst whom above the rest that moves me most, Scipio, my dearest master, is deceased, and death, that sees the noblest blood so rife, full gorged, triumphs and disdains my life.
We are undone.
Scipio has lost the day, but hope the best and hearken to his news.
Oh, cruel fortune.
These misfortunes yet must I report to sad Cornelia, whose ceaseless grief, which I am sorry for, will aggravate my former misery.
Wretch that I am, why leave I not the world? Or wherefore am I not already dead? O world, O wretch.
Is this the undaunted heart that is required in extremities? Be more confirmed, and, madam, let not grief abuse your wisdom like a vulgar wit. Haply the news is better than the noise. Let's hear him speak.
Oh no, for all is lost. Farewell, dear father.
He is saved, perhaps.
Methinks I hear my master's daughter speak. What sighs, what sobs, what plaints, what passions have we endured, Cornelia, for your sake?
Where is thine emperor?
Where our captains are? Where are our legions? Where are men at arms? Or where so many of our Roman souls? The earth, the sea, the vultures, and the crows, lions and bears are their best sepulchres.
Oh, miserable.
Now I see the heavens are heaped with rage and horror against this house.
Oh, earth, why opest thou not?
Why wail you so? Assured yourself that Scipio bravely died, and such a death excels a servile life. Say, messenger, the manner of his end will haply comfort this your discontent.
Discourse the manner of his hard mishap, and what disastrous accident did break so many people bent so much to fight.
Caesar, that wisely knew his soldiers' hearts and their desire to be approved in arms, sought nothing more than to encourage us, and therefore faintly skirmishing and craft, lamely they fought to draw us further on, oft to provoke our wary, well-taught troops. He would attempt the entrance on our bars, nay, even our trenches, to our great disgrace, and call our soldiers cowards to their face. But when he saw his wiles, nor bitter words could draw our captains to endanger us, coasting along and following by the foot, he thought to tire and weary us fro thence, and got his willing hosts to march by night, with heavy armor on their hardened backs, down to the seaside, where before fair Thapsus he made his pioneers, poor weary souls, the self-same day to dig and cast new trenches and plant strong barricades where he encamped, resolved by force to hold us hard at work. Scipio no sooner heard of his designs, but being afraid to lose so fit a place, marched on the sudden to the self-same city, where few men might do much, which made him see of what importance such a town would be. The fields are spread, and as a household camp of creeping emmets in a country farm that come to forage when the cold begins, leaving their crannies to go search about, cover the earth so thick as trace we tread, but we shall see 1,000 of them dead. Even so our battles, scattered on the sand, did scour the plains in pursuit of the foe. Once well at Thapsus we began to entrench, to ease our army if it should retire. Another while we softly sally forth, and wakeful Caesar that doth watch our being, when he perceives us marching o'er the plain, doth leap for gladness, and to murder vowed, runs to the tent, for fear we should be gone, and quickly claps his rusty armor on. For true it is that Caesar brought at first an host of men to Afric, meanly armed, but such as had brave spirits and combating, had power and wit to make a wretch a king. Well, forth to field they marched all at once, except some few that stayed to guard the trench. Them Caesar soon and subtly sets in rank, and every regiment, warned with a word, bravely to fight for honor of the day. He shows that ancient soldiers need not fear them that they had so oft disordered, them that already dreamed of death or flight, that tired would ne'er hold out if once they see that they o'erlaid them in the first assault. Meanwhile our emperor, at all points armed, whose silver hairs and honorable front were warlike, locked within a plumed casque. In one hand held his targe of steel embossed, and in the other grasped his cutelace, and with a cheerful look surveyed the camp, exhorting them to charge and fight like men, and to endure whate'er betide them. For now, quoth he, is come that happy day, wherein our country shall approve our love. Brave Romans, know this is the day and hour that we must all live free or friendly die. For my part, being an ancient senator, an emperor and consul, I disdain the world should see me to become a slave. I'll either conquer or this sword you see, which brightly shone, shall make an end of me. We fight not, we, like thieves, for others' wealth. We fight not, we, to enlarge our scant confines, to purchase fame to our prosperities, by stuffing of our trophies in their houses. But 'tis for public freedom that we fight, for Rome we fight, and those that fled for fear, nay more, we fight for safety of our lives, our goods, our honors, and our ancient laws. As for the empire and the Roman state, due to the victor, thereon ruminate. Think how this day the honorable dames, with blubbered eyes and hands to heaven upreared, still invocating for us to the gods, that they will bless our holy purposes. Methinks I see poor Rome in horror clad, and aged senators in sad discourse mourn for our sorrows in their solitude. Methinks I see them while lamenting thus, their hearts and eyes lie hovering over us. On them, on then, brave men, my fellows and Rome's friends, to show us worthy of our ancestors. And let us fight with courage and conceit, that we may wrest the masters of the field, that this brave tyrant, valiantly beset, may perish in the press before our faces, that with his troops, as touched with lightning flames, may by our horses in heaps be overthrown, and he, blood-thirsting, wallow in his own. This said, his army crying all at once, with joyful tokens did applause his speech, whose swift, shrill noise did pierce into the clouds, like northern winds that beat the horned alpines. The clattering armor, buskling as they paced, rung through the forests with a frightful noise, and every echo took the trumpet's clang, when, like a tempest raised with whirlwind's rage, they ran at ever each other hand and foot, wherewith the dust, as with a darksome cloud, arose and overshadowed horse and man. The darts and arrows on their armor glanced, and with their fall the trembling earth was shaken. The air, that thickened with the thundering cries, with pale wan clouds discolored the sun. The fire and sparks fro forth their armor flew, and with a duckish yellow choked the heavens. The battle locked with bristle-pointed spears, do at the half-pike freely charge each other, and dash together like two lusty bulls, that jealous of some heifer in the herd, run head to head, and sullen will not yield, till dead or fled the one forsake the field. The shivered lances, rattling in the air, fly forth as thick as motes about the sun, when with their swords, fleshed with the former fight, they hew their armor, and they cleave their casques, till streams of blood like rivers fill the downs, that being infected with the stench thereof, surcloys the ground, and of a champion land makes it a quagmire where knee-deep they stand. Bloodthirsty Discord with her snaky hair, a fearful hag with her fire-darting eyes, runs across the squadrons with a smoky brand, and with her murdering whip encourageth the over-forward hands to blood and death. Bellona, fired with a quenchless rage, runs up and down, and in the thickest throng cuts, casts to the ground, and matting makes a pool, which in her rage free passage doth afford, that with our blood she may anoint her sword. Now we of our side urge them to retreat, and now before them we retire as fast as on the Alps the sharp northeast wind, shaking a pine tree with her greatest power, when while the top doth almost touch the earth, and then it riseth with a counter buff. So did the armies press and charge each other, with self-same courage, worth, and weapons too. And prodigal of life for freedom, with burning hate let each at other fly, thrice did the cornets of the soldiers cleared, turned to the standard to be new supplied, and thrice the best of both was fain to breathe, and thrice recomforted they bravely ran, and fought as freshly as they first began, like two fierce lions fighting in a desert to win the love of some fair lioness, when they have vomited their long-grown rage and proved each other's force sufficient. Passant regardant, softly they retire, their jawbones dyed with foaming froth and blood, their lungs like sponges rammed within their sides, their tongues discovered and their tails long trailed, till jealous rage engendereth the rest, returns them sharper set than at the first, and makes them couple when they see their prize, with bristled backs and fire-sparked eyes, till tired or conquered, one submits or flies. Caesar, whose king-like looks, like day-bright stars, both comfort and encourage his to fight, marched through the battle, laying still about him, and subtly marked whose hand was happiest, who nicely did but dip his spear in blood, and who more roughly smeared it on his fist, who staggering fell with every feeble wound, and who so strongly paced it through the fixed, him he inflamed and spurred, and filled with horror, as when Alecto in the lowest hell doth breathe new heat within Orestes' breast, till outward rage with inward grief begins. The fresh remembrance of our former sins. For then, as if provoked with prickling goads, their warlike armies, fast locked foot to foot, stooped their heads low bent to toss their staves. They fiercely opened both battalions, cleave, break, and raging tempest like o'erturn. Whate'er makes head to meet them in this humor, our men at arms, in brief, begin to fly, in neither prayers, entreaty, nor example, of any of their leaders left alive, had power to stay them in this strange career, straggling as in the fair Calabrian fields, where wolves for hunger ranging fro the wood make forth amongst the flock that scattered flies before the shepherd that resistless lies.
Oh, cruel fortune.
None resisting now, the field was filled with all confusion of murder, death, and direful massacres. The feeble bands that yet were left entire had more desire to sleep than seek for spoil. No place was free from sorrow. Everywhere lay armed men, o'ertrodden with their horses, dismembered bodies drowning in their blood, and wretched heaps lie mourning of their maims, whose blood, as from a sponge or bunch of grapes crushed in a wine press, gusheth out so fast, as with the sight doth make the sound aghast. Some should you see that had their heads half cloven, and on the earth their brains lie trembling. Here one new wounded helps another dying. Here lay an arm and there a leg lay shivered. Here horse and man o'erturned for mercy cried, with hands extended to the merciless, that stopped their ears and would not hear a word, but put them all remorseless to the sword. He that had hap to scape doth help afresh to reinforce the side whereon he served, but seeing that there the murdering enemy pestle-messel pursued them like a storm of hail, they again retire where Juba was encamped, but there had Caesar eftsoons tyrannized, so that despairing to defend themselves, they laid aside their armor, and at last offered to yield unto the enemy, whose stony heart that ne'er did Roman good would melt with nothing but their dearest blood. And Scipio, thy father, when he beheld his people so discomfited and scorned, when he perceived the labor profitless, to seek by new encouraging his men, to come upon them with a fresh alarm, and when he saw the enemy's pursuit, to beat them down as fierce as thundering flints, and lay them level with the charged earth, like ears of corn with rage of windy showers, their battles scattered and their ensigns taken, and to conclude, his men dismayed to see the passage choked with bodies of the dead, incessantly lamenting the extreme loss and suspirable death of so brave soldiers, he spurs his horse and, raking through the press, trots to the haven where his ships he finds, and, hopeless, trusteth to the trustless winds. Now had he thought to have arrived in Spain, to raise new forces and return to field. But as one mischief draws another on, a sudden tempest takes him by the way and casts him up near to the coasts of Hypon, where the adverse navy, sent to succor the sea, did hourly keep their ordinary course, where seeing himself at anchor slightly shipped, besieged, betrayed by wind, by land, by sea, all raging mad to rig his better vessels, the little while this navy conflict lasted, behold, his own was fiercely set upon, which being sore beaten, till it brake again, ended the lives of his best fighting men. There did the remnant of our Roman nobles, before the foe and in their captain's presence, die bravely with their falchions in their fists, when Scipio, that saw his ships through gold, and by the foe fulfilled with fire and blood, his people put to sword, sea, earth, and hell, and heaven itself conjured to injure him, steps to the poop, and with a princely visage looks upon his weapon dyed with blood. Sighing, he sets it to his breast and said, "Since all our hopes are by the gods beguiled, what refuge now remains for my distress but thee, my dearest, ne'er deceiving sword? Thee, my latest fortune's firmest hope, by whom I am assured this hap to have, that, being free-born, I shall not die a slave." Scarce had he said, but cruelly resolved, he trenched it to the pommel through his sides, that fro the wound the smoky blood ran bubbling, wherewith he staggered. And I stepped to him to have embraced him, but he, being afraid to attend to the mercy of his murdering foe, that still pursued him and oppressed his ships, crawled to the deck, and, life within death to ease, headlong he threw himself into the seas.
O cruel gods! O heaven! O direful fates! O radiant sun that slightly gildest our days! O night stars full of infelicities! O triple-titled Hecate, queen and goddess, bereave my life, or living strangle me! Confound me quick, or let me sink to hell! Thrust me from forth the world, that mongst the spirits the infernal lakes may ring with my laments! O miserable, desolate, distressful wretch, worn in mishaps, yet in mishaps abounding! What shall I do? Or whither shall I fly to venge this outrage, or revenge my wrongs? Come, wrathful furies, with your ebon locks, and feed yourselves with mine inflamed blood. Ixion's torments, Sisyph's rolling stone, and the eagle tiring on Prometheus be my eternal tasks, that the extreme fire within my heart may from my heart retire. I suffer more sorrows I endure than all the captives in the infernal court. O troubled fate, fatal misery, that unprovoked dealst so partially. Say, fretful heavens, what fault have I committed, or wherein could mine innocence offend you, when being but young I lost my first love, Crassus? Or wherein did I merit so much wrong to see my second husband Pompey slain? But amongst the rest, what horrible offense, what hateful thing unthought of have I done, that in the midst of this my mournful state, naught but my father's death could expiate? Thy death, dear Scipio, Rome's eternal loss, whose hopeful life preserved our happiness, whose silver hair encouraged the weak, whose resolutions did confirm the rest, whose end, sith it hath ended all my joys. O heaven, at least permit of all these plagues that I may finish the catastrophe, sith in this widowhood of all my hopes I cannot look for future happiness. For both my husbands and my father gone, what have I else to wreak your wrath upon? Now, as for happy thee, to whom sweet death hath given blessed rest for life's bereaving, O envious Julia, in thy jealous heart venge not thy wrong upon Cornelia. But, sacred ghost, appease thine ire, and see my hard mishap in marrying after thee. O see mine anguish, haply, seeing it, 'twill move compassion in thee of my pains, and urge thee, if thy heart be not of flint or drunk with rigor, to repent thyself, that thou inflamest so cruel a revenge in Caesar's heart upon so slight a cause, and madest him raise so many mournful tombs, because thy husband did revive the lights of thy forsaken bed, unworthily opposing of thy fretful jealousy 'gainst his mishap, as it my help had been, or as if second marriage were a sin. Was never city where calamity hath sojourned with such sorrow as in this. Was never state wherein the people stood so careless of their conquered liberty, and careful of another's tyranny. O gods, that erst of Carthage took some care, which by our fathers pitiless was spoiled, when thwarting destiny at Afric walls did topsy-turvy turn their commonwealth. When forceful weapons fiercely took away their soldiers sent to nourish up those wars, when fired their golden palaces fell down, when through the slaughter th'Afric seas were dyed and sacred temples quenchlessly inflamed. Now is our hapless time of hopes expired. Then satisfy yourself with this revenge, content to count the ghosts of those great captains which conquered, perished by the Roman swords. The Hannos, the Hamilcars, Hasdrubals, especially that proudest Hannibal that made the fair Thrasymens so desert. For even those fields that mourned to bear their bodies, now loaden grown to feel the Roman courses. Fair earth we purple o'er, and on their tombs we heap our bodies, equaling their ruin. And as a Scipio did reverse their power, they have a Scipio to revenge them on. Weep therefore, Roman dames, and from henceforth veiling your crystal eyes to your fair bosoms, rain showers of grief upon your rose-like cheeks, and dew yourselves with springtides of your tears. Weep, ladies, weep, and with your reeking sighs thicken the passage of the purest clouds, and press the air with your continual plaints. Beat at your ivory breast, and let your robes defaced and rent be witness of your sorrows. And let your hair that won't be wreathed in tresses now hang neglectedly dangling down your shoulders, careless of art or rich accoutrements, that with the gold and pearl we used before, our mournful habits may be decked no more. Alas, what shall I do? O dear companions, shall I live in these laments? Widowed of all my hopes, my haps, my husbands, and last not least bereft of my best father, and of the joys mine ancestors enjoyed when they enjoyed their lives and liberty? And must I live to see great Pompey's house, a house of honor and antiquity, usurped in wrong by lawless Antony? Shall I behold the sumptuous ornaments which both the world and fortune heaped on him, adorn and grace his graceless enemy? Or see the wealth that Pompey gained in war sold at a pike and borne away by strangers? Die rather, die, Cornelia, and to spare thy worthless life that must one day perish, let not these captains vainly lie interred, or Caesar triumph in thine infamy, that wert the wife to one and t'other's daughter. But if I die before I have entombed my drowned father in some sepulchre, who will perform that care in kindness for me? Shall his poor wandering limbs lie still tormented, tossed with the salt waves of the wasteful seas? No, lovely father, and my dearest husband, Cornelia must live, though life she hateth, to make your tombs, and mourn upon your hearses, where languishing my famous faithful tears may trickling bathe your generous sweet cinders, and afterward, both wanting strength and moisture, fulfilling with my latest sighs and gasps the happy vessels that enclose your bones, I will surrender my surcharged life, and when my soul earth's prison shall forgo, increase the number of the ghosts below. Non prosunt Domino, que prosunt Domine, omnibus artes.
And thus ends the cheerful and happy tale of Cornelia. Though without a stage covered with bodies, it's unusual for us in an evening. Yeah, it's really interesting actually how that flows just running it through. I mean, it is this wall of words coming at us, and it's a lot to take in. The opening doesn't, does not. It's no holds barred. The opening, is it? It doesn't explicate awfully. It's not interested in doing that. It's that first act is really hard to get into, and then you hit Act 2, and suddenly you have these flashes of stuff that's a lot easier to digest, a lot more immediate. And then we sink deep into politics in Act 4, where we sort of go off on this tangent, an important tangent. It's an interestingly structured piece. But it's pretty much bang on 2 hours. So and some massive speechifying there. Absolutely enormous. I mean, that messenger speech is just. I mean, in performance, I was already. I already have a note to say. Let's have a ghost of Scipio come in and do his dialogue, just to give the messenger just a few more in breaths. But yeah, it's really looking at it now, going right. What's the cutting strategy? Because there's some excess there that excess baggage that could be done with, and yet it is quite tight in how it's structured a lot of the time to make it hard to do that without damaging the verse. Damn you, writers, not wanting people to cut or interfere with your writing. Thoughts from the room, especially for the newbies, Leo and Tom, who've definitely have come to this text fresh. Leo, I'll go to you first. How did the play come across to you?
It felt quite slow, to be honest. I think the fact that there's obviously a lot of talking and little moving makes it quite got to sort of focus, and the long sentences basically are also something to
You're getting very quiet. I'm struggling to hear you.
Sorry, no, I forgot to I tried to fix it by moving the mic and then I forgot. But so it's long, and also it seemed like we were also trying to piece together as we went the sort of Roman politics as it goes, which seems like another thing to be aware of. At least maybe an audience at this time would have.
Yes, I mean, we haven't included the argument in terms of what we actually performed, but the importance of having some idea where you're supposed to be going with this. I think explication is one of its weaknesses. Is it doesn't really tell you where we're at. You're sort of expected to half know it already, and sometimes that's fine, and sometimes that really isn't. It's like Cicero comes on and he's talking for ages, and it's only about halfway through the speech that he actually mentioned the word Rome, and you go, "Oh, you're talking about lovely, good." You left lots of clues dangling along the way, but if you just said the word Rome a few times earlier and a few things, it would have really helped to know where we're going to do it, because we're dancing around other things at the beginning of the speech and other stuff, and it's just like a few more things to hang our hats on before we got into names of characters who we're not really going to meet. Interesting problems there. Tom, how did it come across to you? This neoclassical wall of words.
It was wonderful. It was Olympian in its demands. I was very impressed, and it rolled beautifully once the person got into it. And thank you for giving me Brutus, that beautifully small and succinct part for a newbie. But I am very impressed with the stamina and the skill of the readers. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been really cruel if I'd handed you the messenger.
You mean
that's in about
fun.
That's your next visit. We'll give you the big one.
Yeah. Let you sort of get into the zone, and actually the evening group's done a lot of neoclassical stuff like this, where you have to negotiate these long speeches, because that's the game. That's it's not like a playhouse play where you've got more room for manoeuvre. This kind of tradition doesn't necessarily have that many actors on stage at any one time. It has to be descriptive, and also it's the form of the thing, the conventions as well at play. Greg, how was it for you this time round?
Well, I wasn't here the first time.
Were you not?
No,
did
I
you
was
miss this?
It was lovely having a night off's not the right word, but a lesser role this time, because it just let me just have the words wash over me. I think because I knew more of the history, I probably was feeling a little less washed out. But yeah, once it gets to the scenes where Cornelia is talking to someone, or we've got the Brutus and the Cassius, it does feel much easier to listen to and understand. But yeah, it's an interesting play.
Yeah, there's a sort of structural issue with what Cicero's doing at the beginning, and who is Cicero to Cornelia, and why are they having a conversation, and when Cicero pops up again, in between Cornelia talking about what's happened to Pompey and then Pompey turning up, is this sort of interesting sort of stopgap, and it's sort of like it feels like the two scenes actually should run into each other. I've had this ghostly premonition. Well, we know what happened, but and then the body turns up. Cicero, Lynsey, how was Cicero for you? It's a really difficult part, Cicero.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can see how the sort of, I've lived so long, I've seen all of this happen, and now this is happening, and it's, and then the role with Cornelia being one of sort of uncle-like advisor, or, sort of, counterpoint to what she's going through. But I think it does need cutting, because it's very obviously very rhetorical, and even it goes from enormous speeches to medium-sized speeches to I can't remember the technical term for it, but the one-liners going back and forth. So there is in the flow of the text changing in pacing and that kind of thing, but it isn't as dynamic as a play in which people actually talk to each other rather than kind of declaim. So I think some of the chorus could be cut. I think when speeches have endless examples, and I think this is true in Cicero mainly, have many, many examples to illustrate the point that they're making, some of that could go, which would hopefully remove entire chunks rather than trying to kind of fillet lines and therefore break up the rhythm. But God knows how you do that, basically. But that would be my instinct to approach it that way, I think. I enjoyed it. I thought it was, this is my first time to it as well. And I thought it has some fantastic stuff. And I was reminded of something during one of Cornelia's speeches, which I did put in the chat. That's why I wanted to find out the date of this and to compare and contrast.
Yeah, I mean it's one of the things. It's perfectly, you could stage it as writ with and put it like that. It's not an unreasonable length, but it is it's going to be a very niche audience if you do it as writ. I think with adjustments, there are several possible versions and routes you could make out of this, because there is an element of going, well, Act 4, I love Act 4, I love all the scenes in Act 4, but they are also a bit of a tangent. And so there is a version in my head where I'm going, well, actually, most of that actually gets just trimmed away, just a bit of Caesar to contrast with Cicero. I'd move Cicero's speech in the middle of Act 3 to the end of Act 3, so we go straight from Cicero going, Rome is doomed, and then Caesar going, Rome is going to, lucky Rome for me. And then back into the fundamental central thing. One of the reasons I wanted to come back to this second look was to see whether that Act 4 felt completely out of place. And I think there is still another route where you don't remove it, you just try and fill it and trim. It's really that Act 1 where I almost wanted to cut Act 1 down to the bare bones to just make it a really effective prologue, so that we can then dive, to set the scene of going, there's some bad things going on. Rome is going to the dogs. It's affecting families, it's affecting people, and then someone it has affected comes on, and effectively that Cicero hasn't left.
Yeah.
It's just Cicero's on, does a little prologue, Cornelia enters, he actually overhears the speech, and then that's how it functions.
I think that could work really well, because we were all commenting in the chat how as soon as Cornelia came on, it just became alive in a different way, because it was a human being speaking about feelings and relationships and events that were affecting her. Just instantly more interesting. So yeah, I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, and Liza, as Cornelia, so much terrible things happens to you. So, that's 3 deaths in the family. That's a lot of grief.
It is. I mean, Crassus dies a while before the play starts. And she gets over it and she marries again. And I think Pompey's first wife is Julia, whose pardon she implores at the end. So it's a second marriage for both her and Pompey. And I don't know whether we're meant to think that that's a sin or not. Personally, I really like the Caesar, Antony, and Brutus, Cassius scenes in Act 4 because they feel like dialogue rather than just monodrama. And a lot of Cornelia, even though she does talk to and with other people, a lot of Cornelia feels like monodrama. And the challenge there is not being a Johnny one note and not going too high too early. Another reason I appreciate Act 4 is that Cornelia gets a break.
Yeah. Oh, Liza's freezing on us. Or is that everyone's freezing on me? But yeah, absolutely. It's it is that thing that I really love those 2 scenes. They're really fab. But yeah, it's just whether they fit into everything. And for the viewers at home, yes, everyone is slowly leaving. This was a very late session, so everyone's sort of slowly drifting off as they say a thing, and everything's sort of slowly cutting out as our internet connections fail. Rachael, do you have anything you want to throw in while I can still see you?
I think it was you, me, Dan, Liza might have been there, and Eric, and I really didn't get this one the first time around, but it having done other stuff and then coming back to this, it makes a lot more sense, and I know not what points to hit, but I know what they're saying now, and a little more how to handle that text. Yeah, I do agree about the Cicero stuff, but it also makes me wonder, because hers is personal and his is political, but I wonder if it's also personal, and if this was a point of view of not necessarily the Roman times, but of the UK at the time, where there had been so much civil war and all these tumultuous events and plagues, that if somebody died, it was like you can't grieve, you have to move on type thing. And if that's where he's coming from, that he is coming from that,
maybe so. I mean, it would be hard to think of there not being a social commentary aspect in this play, especially since Kyd was one of the people who got in trouble, I think, for that sort of thing a time or two.
Though it is complicated as it being a translation of a play by a French author from 20 years earlier. So
Yes.
we've got to be a
Although
bit
that
careful
does
about layering that on.
You're right about that, but Rachel is also right, I think, in that so much of Cicero's speeches about essentially the state of the union, ever since 2016 in both the UK and the US, we've both felt how the politics can make you personally feel, how how easy it is, how quick destruction can be, and how terrible its consequences, and how it can feel personal. It can weigh on your soul, and it does affect people's day-to-day lives. Maybe Cicero is too privileged to feel that, but...
Well, yeah, there's a sort of hypocrisy, because Cicero's basically spent the entire of Act 1 going, oh, God, everything's awful. And then the moment somebody else comes on for a much more personal reason for saying, I want to feel really awful, it says, actually, no, you should distance yourself. So there's an almost hypocrisy thing going on there that's really interesting.
Yes, I suppose it's philosophical to grieve for civil woes, but it's not philosophical to grieve for people you love dying.
Yeah. I don't know if Rachel's image is frozen there.
No, I see Rachel. She's moving.
Ah, right. Oh, it's just on my screen then. Anyway, I think I'd better close this session now before we all lose consciousness. Thank you very much, everyone. We will hopefully come back to this in some form relatively soon. Not quite sure in what form, but we hopefully will return for a second take at this in the future. All that remains is thank those who are still standing for all their wonderful time. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.